What is up, everybody? This is What is Sports. I'm your host, Nick Grant, and with me is JP Cochran. JP, how's it going?
It's going well. Everything's good. I'm back living in Paris, Texas right now. I was living in Dallas, but I'm back in Paris. So.
The motherland.
That's right.
Well, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, for those who are normal listeners, Dietz is not obviously hosting tonight. He wasn't able to record. He had some prior things to deal with. But anyways, JP and I will be your hosts and talking about boxing today. It'll be a lot of fun. And some social media plugs real fast. If you haven't, please like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter at whatisports1, no question mark. And also, if you haven't, please subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or Google Play. And leave us a rating and review if you like the show. They help us out a lot, and it makes us feel good inside. So please do that. Also, check us out, our sister show, What is Nerd? We've got a lot of fun, nerdy topics on that.
You're trying to turn me into a nerd, basically. So
yeah, it's fun. And you hear JP talk about anime, so you can't beat that. And
yeah, it's very educational.
Oh yeah, for sure. And finally, if you have any questions or comments, send us an email at wisportscast@gmail.com. Well, it happened. We finally filled up our Fantasy Football Listener League. JP, are you excited or what?
I am excited. I'm excited, first of all, so I can redeem myself from fantasy baseball.
Yeah.
It hasn't really gone the way I expected. It's actually all my fault. But I'm looking forward to fantasy football because last season, in the past, there have been seasons where I haven't really done anything. Last season, I was a little more active than normal.
Yeah, and it just helps. Yeah, whenever you can just paying a little attention and a little effort into it, it goes a long way.
It's exciting. I found myself constantly checking out my players. I wasn't rooting for teams. I was rooting for my Dallas Cowboys, but I was not rooting for teams. I was rooting for players.
Oh, yeah.
So that makes it more exciting. Fantasy football, yeah, it definitely helps you get into the NFL season.
Oh, for sure. And you, like what you just said, that's how I feel. I don't watch a lot of NFL football, but whenever there's a game on and I'm like, oh yeah, I've got Julio Jones and he's on the Falcons and the Falcons are playing, so it makes me pay a little more attention to him and what's going on. So yeah, I definitely agree. It's a lot of fun. But we talked about this in the other episodes. We will be releasing episodes made exclusively for the Listener League. Obviously, any listener can check it out, but it's kind of geared towards that. We're gonna have a lot of fun stuff with those episodes, so you won't want to miss those. Even if you're not in the league, you can still have fun, and it'll be a little more silly, but it'll be a good episode.
Yeah.
All right. Last week was the MLB trade deadline. JP, did you pay much attention to that?
Well, I paid attention to it because I heard of the biggest trade I heard was, okay, you have the Houston Astros, who are the top team in the league. I think maybe they have the best record in baseball, if I'm not mistaken.
It's either them or the Dodgers, but yeah, they're definitely one of the top teams.
But so anyway, the Astros had a good pitching staff. They had Garrett Cole and their ace Verlander and some other people.
Yeah, Wade Miley, he's been doing pretty well too.
Yeah. But they added another star pitcher to the team, Zach Greinke, who's from the Diamondbacks. And I didn't really hear anything about him. I mean, I probably wasn't listening to that much MLB radio, or I wasn't watching, Baseball Tonight every night, but I just didn't know that was in the works. And
I don't think anybody knew, because everybody was on Twitter and checking out notifications as the deadline was coming to a close, and then it seems like out of the blue, Zach Greinke traded to the Astros, and they already had, like you said, one of the best pitching staffs in baseball. They have three aces in their rotation. That is insane. And so a great team, just got better. So yeah, they're definitely the favorites to win the World Series. This is actually the first year where there's not a waiver trade deadline. JP, you probably know this, but so in years past, there's always the trade deadline on July 31st, and then there was a waiver trade deadline, so you could still make some trades, but it was actually kind of confusing. I really don't understand it, why you have a deadline and you can still trade. But anyways, that happened. But this was the first year they said, you know what, this is the deadline. No more trading after that. And there really wasn't a ton of action. Like you said, the Greinke trade was probably the biggest one. The only other trade I think would be up there with that was a day or two before the trade deadline. The Reds, Padres, and Cleveland Indians participated in a three-team trade where the Reds received starting pitcher Trevor Bauer from the Indians, who's a good pitcher, and the Indians received outfielder Yasiel Puig and Franmil Reyes, and the Padres received one of the top minor leaguer prospects, I think just in the Red system, but maybe overall, Taylor Trammell. So that was a pretty big trade. When you get multiple teams involved, that's always a pretty big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But
right, yeah.
But besides that, I mean, were there any trades that you thought were interesting? Because I know for me,
no.
It seems like there was a lot of relief pitchers that got traded, but anything else?
Yeah, I mean, what I really heard was it was kind of not too exciting. I mean, some people were comparing it to like the NBA trades and off season and all of that, which we all know is always dramatic and exciting. But it definitely wasn't as eventful as that. But the only trade that I really heard of, probably also because, I live in Texas, and I mean I have a girlfriend who's an Astros fan, and Astros fans on Facebook just posting stuff about Greinke, and I mean that's just good. Like they have a good general manager and a good front office, and I mean I think that they were already one of the favorites to win the World Series, but they're probably the favorite to win the World Series now, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, definitely, and that's what was a little surprising. Not just because they made that huge acquisition, but the fact that the Yankees, Red Sox, and Dodgers, who are still really in the thick of things, didn't really do anything to really bolster their team. I know the Dodgers added a few players, a few bats, but nothing big. And the Yankees, they've had a lot of injury issues, and their starting rotation has been kind of questionable. And the fact that they didn't add a front line or a decent top of the rotation pitcher was surprising. I think they were talking to some people, but nothing happened. And the Mets, who they acquired Marcus Stroman from the Blue Jays, that was a surprise because people speculated that the Yankees or somebody else would get him, who's a good starting pitcher. And a lot of other players didn't get traded that people thought would, like Madison Bumgarner, the Giants.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a pretty good pitcher, and the Yankees could have used him. Mike Minor was rumored to be traded from the Rangers. He didn't move. And Noah Syndergaard, there's a lot of talk about him from the Mets. He wasn't traded, so there was a lot of
That's
surprises.
the other thing. Yeah, I heard Madison Bumgarner was they were trying to thinking about trading him. But haven't the Giants been doing pretty well lately? Like they didn't have a good beginning of the season, but I think I've heard that they've been winning a lot lately.
Yeah, they've been playing pretty well. I think they're hot, and just listening to other radio shows and things like that, there really isn't a reason for why they're doing so well. It's like they're playing well, but it's like they just got hot, and we're all just waiting for them to crash back down to earth and not be so good, I guess. So that's why it's kind of surprising that the Giants didn't trade Madison Bumgarner to get some prospects, because they're not, well, they're playing good right now. Like there's like zero chance they're going to win the World Series. So it would have made sense to trade him, get some prospects, and kind of reload for next year. And there's a few teams that did that. Didn't really trade some key pieces that they could have. But
yeah, I know the Rangers. A lot of people were thinking about trading Mike Minor, but I don't think they were going to get enough in return. So they, that didn't end up happening. And actually, also Mike Minor wanted to. He didn't want to leave Texas anyway.
Right. Yeah, I saw that too.
Yeah, like I think I heard that he just kind of gets angry or upset anytime people talk about it. But that's as far as the Rangers. Yeah, that's the only high level player that they've been talking about.
Right.
But anyway, and I know he's older, so and he had a good start of the season. I don't think the middle of the season I don't think towards the trade deadline he wasn't pitching as well. So maybe his value went down a little bit.
But. Yeah, probably. But I mean, he's also under team control for a few years, so that definitely helps. Yeah. But some other relatively big names that got traded. Corey Dickerson, outfielder, he was traded from the Pirates to the Phillies. The Rays traded for Jesus Aguilar from the Brewers, who had a pretty big breakout year last year. He's been kind of, stinky this year. Like, he hasn't been that great. And then the Diamondbacks, after they traded, or in preparation for trading, Zach Greinke, they received Mike Leake from the Mariners and Zach Gallen from the Marlins. And like I said, a ton of relief pitchers were traded, which...
Right.
I mean...
Yeah, and... I was going to say, like, I know we were talking about the Astros. The Astros also got another pitcher.
Are you talking about Aaron Sanchez?
Yeah, but the Astros had a combined no-hitter the other day, and Sanchez pitched, like, the first 6 innings of that. So, and I think maybe he's like the number 5 pitcher or something, but...
Yeah.
I mean, just the fact that they got him, and I mean, he sounded like he was pitching really well. So,
yeah,
and that's like going into the playoffs. That's, I think, the most important thing is your pitching.
No, for sure.
You know, I've heard so many times like good pitching always beats good hitting, but I mean maybe that's different now. I know they've kind of doctored the balls a little bit now, so I don't know if that's the case anymore. But
yeah, now it seems like he's first to 12 wins. You know, they're hitting so many home runs, exactly. But I mean, it's always good to have good pitchers. And you're talking about the playoffs. When you're in the playoffs, your pitching rotation alters a little bit. You really, in the regular season, you know, you only use a 5-man rotation, sometimes a 6. Mm-hmm. Well, in the playoffs, you only need a 3-man rotation essentially, and so 3 or 4. And so you're gonna have Verlander, Greinke, Cole, and then Wade Miley is your 4-man rotation, and then you have the newly acquired Sanchez, who's shown that he can
be a relief pitcher.
Oh yeah,
or something.
And so that bolsters the bullpen, and so they'll be pretty scary in the playoffs for sure. And you know their offense has been really great last several years, and
yeah, they're just stacked. Like Altuve gets a hit like every time. I can't believe the power Altuve has because he's 5'6", and he's got so much power. I mean, he's not like, you know, Aaron Judge or anything, but he still is able to hit the ball over hit a home run. I don't know how many homers he has every year, but he just doesn't have that much leverage. But still, he's pretty powerful. And you have Correa at shortstop, and I don't know. They've got a good, just as far as being a very balanced team. Offensive and defensively, they're probably the best.
Oh yeah, they definitely with that Greinke trade, they definitely skyrocketed. I mean, they're already one of the favorites, and now they put some distance between them and everybody else. So, but yeah, that's some updates from the trade deadline. It was somewhat lackluster, except for the big stuff at the end. But anyways, pretty neat stuff. Moving on to boxing, the main event, our main topic. JP, have you watched a lot of boxing, or what's your experience with the sport of boxing?
Okay. So the last fight that I sat down and watched, like from start to finish, was the Mayweather and McGregor boxing match, and which was, you know, a little more competitive than what I expected it to be, but they also could have made it that way. You know, you don't know what goes on behind the scenes.
Right.
You know, with so much money on the line, maybe the boxers were told to prolong the fight, but who knows? It was still entertaining. And then before that, the previous boxing match I watched was the Mayweather Pacquiao fight, which was.
Well, hold on, because that's one of my talking points. So we'll save that for later. But.
And you know, like if I'm at a sports bar or restaurant or something like that, I'll catch some boxing. But you know, it's been a while since I've like just sat down and watched a fight or something. And I've never really been into boxing. Maybe when I was younger, my dad used to watch it every once in a while. But as we've gotten older, I mean, it's gone down in popularity as the UFC has risen.
Yeah.
So it's you know, um, so anyway, I really my history with boxing isn't much at all, but I still enjoy it. I'm a sports fan, so obviously I'll enjoy watching
Oh
boxing.
yeah. Are you a fan of boxing movies like Rocky and all that stuff?
I do like boxing. I watched Creed
Yeah,
2
that's a good one.
that came out. Me and Dietz, your feets, watched that. Not I don't know a few months ago, whenever it was in theaters. I didn't watch the first Creed. Oh, dude,
That's a good movie.
One of my favorite movies, is Cinderella Man.
Oh
I
yeah,
love that movie.
that's a good one.
Yeah, that was a um, great movie. And that was like a movie set in the Depression. Um, because a lot of fighters that they come, it's like from rags to riches. A lot of that's sometimes just all they know. That you're if they want to, they feel like they want to make it big. That may be the only thing they're good at, and so a lot of I don't know. It's just boxing has I think a lot of history with people living in poverty. Um,
Yeah.
so
And plus, I mean, with
that
the
movie,
movie industry, I mean that's just a nice tale, like you said, rags to riches. Everybody likes a feel good story where, like Rocky, he was just some guy who was just, yo, I gotta fight, and he was just wanting to be a fighter and make some money, and he kind of did all right. Uh,
yeah, and sometimes I mean like he was just trying to save his family, and of course we have all the Rocky movies.
oh yeah,
Which of course Creed is tied into Rocky. Yeah, I love boxing movies. Actually, I love boxing.
yeah.
Actually, that's probably the most boxing I've ever seen.
Is boxing.
Through
Yeah, I'm the
yeah.
same way. I've seen, and like I said, we'll talk about this later. The only fight I've really watched in its entirety was the Mayweather Pacquiao fight, and that's pretty much it. I've seen highlights, obviously, and a few other matches here and there, like parts of them. But I like boxing movies, and I don't know. There's just so much history and drama, and there's so many amazing things. You talk about Muhammad Ali, and I mean he was the greatest, and we'll talk more about him as well. But there's just the stories that come from boxing. It's like you can't really make up. That's what's so great about boxing and sports in general too, is that there's so many storylines that come through things, and you're talking about Cinderella Man. I mean that's based on a true story about how a guy in the Depression, he was working at a dock, right, and was this was a fighter, and then really was, like you said, was fighting for his family, and I mean that's a great storyline.
Hmm.
But anyways, that's pretty much our experience. I'm sure Deet's experience with boxing is Rocky movies. But anyways, JP, if you would talk about the history a little bit of boxing and the beginnings of this sport.
Okay, yeah. So we did a little bit of research just because, like I said, I'm not too educated on boxing, and like I said, most of the boxing I've been exposed through to has been through Hollywood. So sparring and dueling with weapons, what we all know was a sport, um, but as the wearing of swords became less common, there was renewed interest in fencing with fists. The sport uh, would later resurface in England during the early 16th century in the form of bare knuckled boxing, sometimes referred to as prize fighting. So, yeah, we go back to the beginning of time. We have the gladiators and the Colosseum. That's what I think of sometimes when I see boxing. Like, this is our common version of like gladiator fighting. Yeah, just I don't know, thirst for blood. I don't know how you feel, Nick.
Yeah, no, I
Um,
mean that's yeah, it kind of does seem like it goes back to those. I mean, obviously you're not fighting tigers and lions and other things that happen with the gladiators, but yeah, I mean that's essentially what it is. It's just pitting, just mano y mano, just guys
mhm.
facing off, and I think it's interesting
Yeah,
that it was referred to as prize fighting because they still call it that today. Prize fighters and all that good stuff.
and so going to back to January 1681, that was the first recorded boxing match that took place in Britain when Christopher Monk, the second Duke of Um, how do we pronounce it? Alba Marie.
Yeah, that sounds
Okay,
about right.
Alba Marie. Okay. And he was later a lieutenant governor of Jamaica. That's just FYI.
No.
Fun fact. Um, he engineered a bout between his butler and his butcher, with the latter winning the prize. So hopefully the butcher did not use his butcher knife during the
Yeah.
fight. But anyway, the butcher won.
Well, that's an interesting matchup. I mean, I guess he just was bored and said, you know what, I want to see my butler and butcher fight, because that's what life's all about. I don't know. That seems really interesting, but
Yeah, so looking at Butcher, it just reminded me of the movie Gangs of New York. It doesn't really have much about boxing, but it has a guy in there, the Butcher. Just it's a good movie. You should check it out. Have you seen that movie, Nick?
I have not.
Dude, you need to watch Gangs of New York. That is a good movie.
I've heard good things.
So the first English bare knuckle champion was James Figg in 1719. So this is like almost a century after the Butler and the Butcher fight. This was also the time when the word boxing first came about. The earliest form of modern boxing was very different. Contests in Mr. Figg's time, in addition to fist fighting, also contained fencing and cudgeling, which is baton fighting.
So they would just fight with their fists and then pull weapons out. And
I guess
beat
so.
Each other with them?
Yeah, I mean, people.
That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know. I just people used to be so brutal. Like, they used to have draws and shoot each other and kill. I mean, that's how Hamilton was killed. And I mean, I just that would be. I just think about that. I'd be terrified to do something like that. But
Yeah, it was a different time, man.
yeah, it was. You're right. I mean, I'm sure people are killed in these bare knuckle fist bouts. So
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, I think that did happen, but
So let's talk about the rules. The first boxing rule is called the Broughton's rules. If that's how you pronounce the name. They were introduced by champion Jack Bruton or Broughton in 1743 to protect fighters in the ring where death sometimes occurred. Under these rules, if a man went down and could not continue after a count of 30 seconds, the fight was over. Hitting a down fighter and grasping below the waist were prohibited. Broughton encouraged the use of mufflers, a form of padded bandage or mitten, to be used in jousting or sparring sessions in training and in exhibition matches. Yeah, I can't imagine bare knuckle fighting. I mean, that's just think about getting hit in the face, but just hitting. I'm sure people's knuckles will just be bloody and torn up.
oh
and,
yeah.
I mean, that just sounds so painful. Like, my knuckles just hurt thinking about that.
And also, I think it's interesting that if a man went down, they gave them 30 seconds. Now it's 10 seconds, right?
Yeah, that's
If you
true.
get knocked down, you have 10 seconds to get up. So there's so much drama in that 10 seconds when somebody gets knocked down. So if somebody's knocked down for 30, it's like, all right, man, just whenever you want to get up,
hmm
any time now. All right. But that's interesting that they didn't. I guess it was more like the early days of boxing. Almost sounds like the early days of UFC. They just had no rules in UFC, and it sounds like there weren't a whole lot of rules when boxing started. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And so in 1867, the Marquis of Queensberry. I don't know what title that is. Marquess. I'm going to say Marquess, okay, of Queensberry rules were drafted by John Chambers for amateur championships held at Lillie Bridge in London for lightweights, middleweights, and heavyweights. The rules were published under the patronage of the Marquess of Queensberry, whose name has always been associated with them. There are 12 rules in all, and they specify that fights should be a fair stand-up boxing match in a 24-foot square or similar ring. Rounds were 3 minutes, with 1 minute rest intervals between rounds. Each fighter was given a 10-second count if he was knocked down, and wrestling was banned. The introduction of gloves of fair size also changed the nature of the bouts. An average pair of boxing gloves resembles a bloated pair of mittens and are laced up around the wrists. The gloves can be used to blocking opponents' blows. As a result of their introduction, bouts became longer and more strategic, with greater importance attached to defensive maneuvers such as slipping, bobbing, countering, and angling. Because less defensive emphasis was placed on the use of forearms and more on the gloves, the classical forearms outwards, torso-leaning back stance of the bare-knuckle boxer was modified to a more modern stance in which the torso is tilted forward and the hands are held closer to the base. So, did you mentally visualize that boxing stance?
I did actually. I actually did because you see these old. When you think of like these old timey fighters, they have their hands way outstretched. And,
exactly.
Yeah, it's like so. Yeah, I can see that. Like the guy with the mustache,
exactly,
black and white photo, and So I mean that's cool. I mean you can see the similarities between that stance and the modern stance. Almost like there's really not. I mean there is a difference obviously, but it's not. It's a nice little evolution of that.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I never would have thought about that. But yeah, it's just always funny to see pictures of people fighting or like old videos of people fighting like that. But hey, I'll give it to him. I mean those guys must have been tough. I don't think if I lived in that time, could have ever, experienced a bare knuckle boxing match. I can't imagine what they felt like after that.
But yeah, I've got some iconic and notable matches that have happened in the history of boxing, and I'm only going to talk about a few of them because there's so many. But one of them I want to talk about is Roberto Duran versus Sugar Ray Leonard. This was the Brawl in Montreal. Took place on June 20th, 1980. And Duran won in 15 rounds by unanimous decision. And actually both of these boxers were considered part of the Four Kings or Fabulous Four. That was a group of boxers who all fought each other throughout the 1980s. It was Roberto Duran, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, and Marvin Hagler. And this fight was for the World Welterweight Championship. And so this is a little bit after Muhammad Ali retired, and Sugar Ray Leonard was now basically the face of boxing. He was well known and very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And Duran, he was a really good boxer. People were saying he was the best pound for pound fighter in the world, and he was the undisputed world lightweight champion for 6.5 years, where he had a record of 71-1.
Wow!
So that's insane.
That was amazing.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, some of these stats of these records are incredible to me alone. So he moved up, and it was a pretty intense fight, and Duran won, but it was a hard fought battle. I obviously haven't seen it, but I've heard and read good things. But JP, we talked a little bit before we started recording. You've heard of the Rumble in the Jungle, right?
Yeah. That's probably the one I've heard about most.
Yeah, it was Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. And do you know that George Foreman is from Texas?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, before he was on TV selling those little grills, he was a heavyweight champion boxer and was from Houston, Texas. So yeah, I mean, pretty much, whenever I think of boxers, I mean, obviously, I think most people think of Muhammad Ali because people consider him the greatest, and he was the greatest. And in several of these fights, when I was looking at the list of the top boxing matches, pretty much the majority at the top were like a combination of 4 or 5 of his fights. So yeah, this is definitely one of them, considered one of the best fights of all time. And it took place. Muhammad Ali, he won by knockout in 8 rounds, which was actually an upset. Ali was a 4-1 underdog, and against the unbeaten defending heavyweight champion George Foreman. It took place in what is now known as the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and George Foreman was 40-0 with 37 knockouts.
Golly.
So just about every time he won, he knocked somebody out.
I would just be terrified fighting him. Like, just the fact.
Have you seen pictures of George Foreman when he was a boxer?
Yeah,
like when he was younger. Man, he looks fierce.
Yeah.
Like now you see him, you're like, oh man, he looks like a nice guy, happy. He looks fierce, and it's like so intense. Like, I love it. Like, it's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
He looks like a killer. It's crazy. And at this time, Muhammad Ali was 44-2 with 31 KOs. So still very impressive. And also at the time of the fight, Ali was 32 years old, while Foreman was a young, up-and-coming boxer at the age of 25. And like I said, Ali won by knockout in 8 rounds. It's a huge upset. And some fun facts about this fight. This was watched by a record estimated television audience of 1 billion viewers worldwide.
1 billion? Wow.
1 billion worldwide, becoming the world's most watched live television broadcast at the time. And estimated 50 million viewers watching the fight pay-per-view. And they're saying it grossed an estimated $100 million. When you inflate that, it comes out to $510 million. And that's just ridiculous. There was so much hype. Because, I mean, obviously, Muhammad Ali was one of the greatest, and you have this big up-and-comer, and there's all this. I feel like now that's what boxing is just building all this hype. And this one didn't disappoint. And there's actually a documentary that came out in 1996. It actually won an Academy Award, and it's called When We Were Kings.
Mm-hmm.
And it talks about the events before and during the fight. I haven't watched it, but I really want to check it out. And also talking about Muhammad Ali, you've heard of Joe Frazier, right?
Yep, I have.
Yeah, well, then you know that Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, it's one of the biggest and most intense rivalries in boxing, and probably in sports just in general. They fought each other 3 times. Ali won twice, and 2 of their matches were for the heavyweight championship. So, you know, just about every time they fought, it was for high stakes.
Mm-hmm.
The first fight was labeled the fight of the century, which I'll get into a little bit more later. The second fight was not a title match, but Muhammad Ali won by unanimous decision in 12 rounds. The third fight was known as the Thrilla in Manila, and that was for the undisputed world heavyweight championship, and Ali would win that in 14 rounds by a TKO.
Wow. See, now, and that's how, I mean, that's, I guess, just how little I know about the history of boxing, because I just wasn't, like, if you'd asked me if is George Foreman or Joe Frazier, you know, like Ali's biggest rival, I wouldn't have known. So that's actually interesting that, and I you know, like when it comes to Thrilla Manila, and I just wasn't really sure. I knew one of those was, I knew both were with Ali, but I couldn't have told you their opponents.
Yeah, and you know fights are going to be great whenever they have amazing nicknames like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, you know, I don't think you really get that anymore. Maybe you do. I'm not a huge, I mean, like we talked about earlier, I don't watch boxing a whole lot. I don't really keep up with it that much. I know a little bit about it, but it's still it's really cool, and obviously it's one of the oldest sports in the, well, yeah, it's a pretty old sport. But yeah, I wanted to talk about the fight of the century. This is considered, along with the Rumble in the Jungle, this is considered one of the greatest fights in the history of boxing, and it's happened March 8th, 1971, and Frazier actually won by unanimous decision in 15 rounds. And at the time, Muhammad Ali was 31-0 with 25 knockouts, and Joe Frazier was 26-0 with 23 knockouts. And again, like I talked about a little bit ago, I feel like a lot of these fights, it's all about hype that helps. Because in March of 1966, Muhammad Ali refused to join the draft into the Vietnam War, and because of that, he would have his boxing license removed, and he'd be stripped of his passport. So from March 1967 to October 1970, from ages 25 to almost 29, he didn't have his boxing license, and he didn't fight professionally. And he was, you know, he talked about opposing the Vietnam War, and he was an advocate for that, and also African American pride and racial justice during that time, and after that time too. But once Ali finally got his license back, it was a big deal because both were undefeated with a combined record of 57-0, and they both had legitimate claims to be the heavyweight champion. And Ali, he was a great trash talker, as I'm sure you know.
Mm-hmm.
And before the fight, he called Joe Frazier and Uncle Tom, and said that he was, quote, too dumb to be champ. So, you get that's perfect bulletin board material.
Mm-hmm.
You have your opponent trash talking you. He's like, all right, he thinks I'm too dumb to be champ. Well, I'll show him. And anyways, there was just a lot of build up to it. Especially there's a lot going on in the world at the time too, with the Vietnam War and civil rights and everything. Obviously, they're both undefeated, but anyways, it's a pretty fierce fight. Ali came out strong, and then Joe Frazier kind of, after 3 rounds, got back in it, and it was back and forth a little bit, but it was pretty intense. And like I said, Frazier won in 15 rounds, so giving Muhammad Ali his first loss.
Yeah, so that was just a decision. I guess he won on decision at the end.
Right, yeah. They both, I think, after reading about this fight, both were extremely beat up. I mean, their faces were pretty swollen, and they were just worn out. I mean, you got these two. It's like you have two. I mean, it was just insane. It's like 2 brick walls running into each other. I guess it was just madness. And I think that's actually showed a lot on ESPN's like classic, greatest fights. And anyways, yeah, that was one of the best fights ever. These next 2 fights, I don't think they're really considered great fights, but I wanted to talk about them. Evander Holyfield versus Mike Tyson won. That was November 9th, 1996, and Holyfield won by TKO. And have you seen the ESPN documentary, the 30 for 30, called Chasing Tyson?
Yeah, I think I have. That's one of the ones I was talking about. Like when I was saying that I think I've seen some documentary. Yeah, I saw that one, I believe.
Yeah, it's really good. I really liked it. It talks about Evander Holyfield and his fights with Mike Tyson, and it covers before the fights and during the fights and kind of after, and it's really interesting.
Yeah,
but at the time of this, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just know that Tyson. He's just a lot of people consider him like the scariest fighter. I think he's got an incredible, powerful punch. Just like his ability to straight up knock out people. He's kind of at the top there. One of the top guys of all time. But
oh yeah, I think he was I want to say he was the heavyweight champion at 19, super young age. I mean, he was just a beast, just so strong. But before the fight, Tyson was 45-1 with 39 knockouts. And Evander Holyfield was 32-3 with 23 knockouts. And Tyson, he was one of the biggest, most popular heavyweight fighters. And actually, before they fought, they were supposed to fight earlier. And Tyson faced Buster Douglas. It was supposed to be a tune-up fight before Holyfield. And Buster Douglas upset Tyson and became the heavyweight champ. So that was kind of disappointing because a lot of people wanted the Holyfield-Tyson fight. Then if Tyson went to prison for about 3 years. And when he got out, he became heavyweight champion again. And they finally fought. And Holyfield would win in an upset for the heavyweight championship. But, they talk about this in that documentary. A lot of people were kind of skeptical, saying, well, Tyson had 3 years in prison, and he's kind of past his prime, so Holyfield didn't really face the true Tyson,
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, and the second time they fought was a little less than a year later. This is the fight that everybody knows. It was a fight for the heavyweight championship, and the whole fight, Holyfield was just dominating Mike Tyson. It was crazy. And in round 3, Tyson and Holyfield were hugging each other, kind of in a clinch to kind of rest. And then Tyson bit part of Holyfield's right ear. It started bleeding, and they thought about calling the fight, but they said, oh no, Holyfield can still fight, so it continued. And when they hugged again during another clinch, Tyson again bit Holyfield's ear, but the fight wasn't stopped. But then after they said, oh wait, you got bit again, they called the fight, and Tyson was disqualified. So everybody says, Mike Tyson bit a guy's ear off. He didn't bite a guy's ear off. He bit 2 parts of a guy's ear off, but not the entire ear. But that's just crazy.
Yeah.
Like that happened. Like
I guess I don't know. Just in the moment, you have so much I mean, he's kind of crazy too. But he's got so much adrenaline going, and I don't know. Maybe at that moment in time, Tyson just wanted to kill him. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how they. Maybe they have to get in that kind of mindset before the match or a boxing match, but just to like pump themselves up, like make them think that they hate this person or something. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I know that that's probably one of the more famous instances or cases in boxing with him biting the ear. Unfortunately, people will always tie Tyson to that. That's part of his legacy, just biting a guy's ear off. So,
but yeah, I mean, you see in pop culture they'll make jokes about it and everything, and I've seen it in several movies, and so everybody knows that Tyson bit a guy's ear.
Yeah.
But the last fight I want to talk about, Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Manny Pacquiao, back on May 2nd, 2015. Mayweather won by unanimous decision. JP, you said you watched it. What did you think of this fight?
I don't know. I remember paying a lot for it.
Yeah, me too.
And I think it was like $80 or something like that, maybe more.
Oh, yeah, it was more. I think it was I paid 90 or 100.
Okay, yeah. I know that it wasn't. It was just kind of like a defensive match. I mean, there were no, of course, nobody knocked anybody out. And I mean, it was very technical. But I just wanted to see someone get knocked out, and that didn't happen.
I think, yeah. Well, the fight is for the welterweight title, and Mayweather was the undefeated 5-division world champion. He was 47-0 with 26 knockouts, and Pacquiao was an 8-division world champion who was 57-5 with 2 draws with 38 knockouts. So there was a lot of hype. Everybody likes Manny Pacquiao. He's just a cool guy. Like he's funny. He's a good guy. And Mayweather, he's an intense fighter, man. He's just an intense person. I mean, he knows he's good, and he's not afraid to show it. And I mean, he's awesome. And so there was a lot of hype building around this fight. It was labeled the fight of the century and the battle of greatness. Everybody wanted this fight, and like you said, it was pretty disappointing. And especially for someone that doesn't watch a lot of boxing like myself, I was like, man, this is really, really slow, really defensive, and a lot of people were upset. And they thought, but that's Mayweather's style. He's a defensive boxer, and he's smart. He picks his spots, and obviously did well and won big. So
yeah, and I mean, I'm not into boxing. Maybe someone who knows about boxing would have liked it more just because of how technical they were and strategic. But yeah, I mean, and then I know Pacquiao came in. He wasn't sure why he lost. Pacquiao thought he won, but I mean, while watching it, it looked like Mayweather was winning. It looked like he was hitting more punches than Pacquiao was. But I just know that it wasn't. It was kind of. I mean, I was excited during the whole thing just because it was so. I was waiting so long to watch it. There was so much anticipation, but yeah, I mean, I mean, probably wouldn't pay for that again.
No, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Like after that happened, I was like, I don't know if I want to spend that kind of money on a fight that I could be disappointed in. I might go to somebody's house if they're watching it, but I don't know if I want to pay for it myself.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I think maybe somebody might have given me some money. I can't remember, but that was a long time ago. But I mean, it was entertaining, but because they're just two great fighters. But yeah, so yeah, we've talked about the historical boxers that most people have heard of before. So we'll talk about some current boxers just in case you listen to this and want to get out there and start watching boxing. Anyway, so this is just according to the site I found, and a lot of these sites had the same a same mix of the top 10 boxers on there. So at number 10 we have Tyson Fury. He's 27 0 and 1, so one, I guess, tie with 19 knockouts.
Jeez.
Yeah, so
what weight class is he?
He's a heavyweight. So anyway, so right now he's one of the top heavyweights. Okay, let's go to number 9. So number 9 we have Mikey Garcia. He's 39 wins, 1 loss, 30 KOs. I mean, that's pretty impressive. 30 KOs. I would not want to challenge him. So.
Well, I don't think I'd want to challenge any of these guys. I mean, they're the top 10 for a reason. I mean, they're all going to be beasts.
Yeah. And so he's a 4-weight world champion. So I guess he's gone up and down between different weight classes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's pretty common because I know Holyfield, he was in a few different weight classes, and we talked about Mayweather and Pacquiao. They were 5-division world champion, 8-division world champion. So yeah, they've definitely gone up and down. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Okay, and so we have this guy from Mexico, Juan Francisco Estrada. He's 39 wins, 3 losses, 26 KOs, and he's gone between a few weight classes as well, between flyweight and super flyweight. Okay, and then at number 7 we have Errol Spence. I know you've heard about him. At least I have. I've just heard a lot about him on the radio and Sports Center. But he's 25-0, 21 knockouts. So,
oh wow,
that's pretty impressive. He's welterweight.
Oh yeah,
yeah, welterweight champion. So at number 6 we have Gennady. This guy sounds like he's Russian. Golovkin, I don't know, but anyway, he's 38 1-1, 34 KOs. Yeah, so a lot of these people have just so many KOs. So anyway, at number 5 we have Naoya Inoue. I don't know, some guy I've never heard of before. He is Japanese. He's 18-0 with 16 knockouts.
So dominating as well.
Yeah, he's a 3-weight world champion. So he's gone up and down between light flyweight and super flyweight. Okay, number 4, we have this guy whose last name is Usyk. He's 16-0, 12 KOs. So he's from the Ukraine, and I'm trying to see what weight class. He's a cruiserweight champion, so whatever weight class that is.
Okay.
Terrence Crawford, 35-0, 26 KOs. He's American, and he's gone between 3 weight classes. One being the super lightweight, but evidently he's known as like the super lightweight king. And then we have number 2, Canelo Alvarez. Have you heard of him, Nick?
Yeah, the name does sound familiar, but that doesn't mean a lot because, like I said, I'm not super familiar with boxing, but yeah, that does sound familiar.
Yeah, so he's middleweight from Mexico, 52 1-2 with 35 knockouts. And at number 1, this guy, that's what this ranking site says. This Lomachenko, he's 13-1 with 10 knockouts. Also he's had an amateur career, and he's also a double Olympic gold medalist, and he's also from the Ukraine. So anyway, that's just a little information on the current boxing scene and who's a good boxer to watch. Maybe it'll give you an idea of a good fight to watch in the future.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, man. That's good names to know for sure. Well, that about wraps it up for the episode today. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to me and JP talk about boxing and some other news topics. As before, like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter at whatisports1, no question mark, and subscribe to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play. And seriously, guys, if you do like the show, we'd really appreciate reviews. It means a lot to us. And also, like I said, we have a sister show called What Is Nerd coming out. New episode coming out this Friday, I believe. Should be a lot of fun. We're talking about Star Trek. So if you want to hear a bunch of guys who just talk about boxing, talk about Star Trek, there you go. It'll be a good conversation, don't you think, JP?
I think it will be. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, a little different from boxing and sports, but we're a podcast for the people. We try to give the people what they want. Anyways, that's all we have for What is Sports. I've been your host, Nick Grant, and with me is JP Cochran. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see y'all next week.